Good morning, students. This video is for Thursday, July 2, 2020. Today, we are going to study the structure of the human heart. In which system does the human heart belong to? Yes, you are correct. The human heart belongs to the circulatory system. And here is the circulatory system in humans. And this is the heart, which is the main organ of the circulatory system. The heart and the blood vessels that carry the blood. What is the circulatory system? The circulatory system carries blood and dissolved substances to the different places in the body and from the different places in the body. The heart has the job of pumping these things around the body. So the heart pumps blood and substances around the body tubes called blood vessels. The heart and blood vessels together make up the circulatory system. But what is the function or the job of the human circulatory system? Our body is made up of many different cells. And these cells of the body need nutrients and oxygen in order for them to do their job. And at the same time, they produce waste products such as carbon dioxide. And these waste products need to be excreted. So the job of the circulatory system is to deliver useful materials to the body cells, such as the nutrients and oxygen, and also removes waste materials from them. So waste materials of the cells are carbon dioxide, urea, and others. So therefore, useful materials, as well as waste materials, which dissolve in blood, circulate around the body. So the human circulatory system has four basic characteristics. The first one is the fluid that circulates around the body, and this is the blood. The other one is the pumping device, or the device that pumps the blood, and this is the heart. The third one are the blood vessels. So the blood vessels that carry the blood around the body. So we have artery, we have vein, and capillaries. So capillaries connect artery and vein. And the fourth one are valves. If you can still remember, our heart has four valves, which prevent the backflow of the blood and to ensure that the blood flows in one direction. Valves also are found in veins. So these valves prevent the backflow of the blood and ensure that the blood flows in one direction. So here is your heart divided into two halves, and you can see the other half, the color is different from the other half. This is because of the blood they have inside. So how does this system work? How does this circulatory system work? So this is what we are going to study right now. Our circulatory system is a double circulatory system. This means it has two parts. The right side of the heart, or the right side of the system, deals with the oxygenated blood. When you say deoxygenated blood, meaning this blood contains high amount of carbon dioxide. The left side of the circulatory system deals with oxygenated blood. So when you say oxygenated blood, this blood contains high amount of oxygen. So blood from the body, the oxygenated blood from the body, from all parts of the body, except the lungs. This blood from all over the body is returned to the right side of the heart. So this blood is the oxygenated blood. So that's why the right side of the heart contains the oxygenated blood coming from all parts of the body. Then the right side of the heart pumps the blood to the lungs, where the gas exchange takes place. So in the lungs, the oxygenated blood becomes oxygenated blood. And then the blood is returned to the left side of the heart. And the left side of the heart pumps oxygenated blood to all parts of the body except the lungs. So the human circulatory system is a double circulatory system. When you say double, means twice. It is called double circulatory system because in one complete circulation of the blood. So this is one complete circulation of the blood. The blood goes to the heart 2 times or twice. So that is why our circulatory system is called a double circulatory system. So we have 2 types of circulation: pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. When you say pulmonary circulation, meaning the circulation of the blood to and from the lungs. And when you say systemic circulation, meaning the circulation of blood to and from the body. So here, from the body to the heart, from the heart to the body, this is called systemic circulation. While the other one is called pulmonary circulation, from the heart to the lungs and from the lungs to the heart. This is called pulmonary circulation. So there are 2 types of circulation in our body: pulmonary and systemic. Pulmonary to and from the lungs, while systemic is to and from the body. So what is the advantage of having a double circulatory system? So the advantage of having a double circulatory system is that it increases the pressure. So the pressure of the blood and the rate of flow. So thereby speeding up the delivery of materials to the tissues. So the delivery of oxygen, the delivery of nutrients to the tissues and cells around the body is fast because the pressure of the blood is higher. Okay, so the structure of the human heart. The human heart is a hollow muscular organ with walls made of cardiac muscles. So if you open your heart, there are spaces inside filled with blood. That is why the human heart is a hollow. Hollow means there is space, there are spaces. And the walls, this one, the walls of the heart are made up of cardiac muscles. So cardiac muscles are the muscles that pump the blood all over the body. And the size of the heart. The size of an adult human being, the size of the heart of an adult human being is about the size of his or her clenched fist. So this one is your fist. Clench means you have to close it tightly. So the size of an adult human heart is about the size of his or her clenched fist. And where is the heart located? The heart is located in the thoracic cavity. When you say thoracic cavity, meaning the space in your chest or your thorax. The space between your chest and your back is called thoracic cavity. So the heart is located in the thoracic cavity between the lungs. This is the apex of the heart. And this one is the base of the heart. So the apex is at the left side of the chest. Which blood vessels supply blood to cardiac muscles? So these are coronary arteries and coronary veins. So the red ones are coronary arteries. So coronary arteries supply blood which contains high amount of oxygen and nutrients to cardiac muscles. And the coronary veins, the blue ones, remove the waste product of cardiac muscles, such as carbon dioxide and urea. So the heart is divided into two halves, the right side and the left side. The structure that divides the heart into right and left is called septum. And this septum prevents the blood from mixing. So the right side of the heart contains the oxygenated blood and the left side of the heart contains oxygenated blood. They don't mix because of this structure called septum. So this is the right side of the heart, and this one is the left side of the heart. So the right side of the heart contains the oxygenated blood, or blood rich in carbon dioxide. And the left side of the heart contains oxygenated blood, or blood rich in oxygen. So the right side of the heart receives blood from the body, from all parts of the body, while the left side of the heart receives blood from the lungs. The human heart has 4 chambers. When you say chambers, meaning rooms. So this one, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is why the human heart is a hollow muscular organ. The walls are made up of cardiac muscles, and it is hollow because there are spaces inside filled with blood. And these spaces inside are called chambers. So the upper chambers are A, and the lower chambers are V. So A or atrium, which is singular. And the plural form for atrium is atria. So this one is the atrium. Or you say these two are the atria. And the other name is auricle. Plural, you just add S. Auricles. And the lower chambers are called the ventricles. So singular, no S. So this is the right side of the heart, and this one is the left side of the heart. So these upper 2 chambers, atria, and the lower 2 chambers, which are ventricles. So therefore, this one is RA, because this is the right side. This one is RV. This one is LA. And this one is LV. So RA stands for right atrium or right auricle, and RV stands for right ventricle. LA, left atrium, and LV, left ventricle. So these are the four chambers of the human heart. Right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. Now, ventricles are thicker than atria, meaning the walls. The walls of ventricle are thicker than the atria. Look at the walls of atrium or atria and the walls of ventricle. So the walls of ventricle are thicker and atria are thinner because when this atria pumps the blood goes down to the ventricles from RA to RV, from LA to LV. So meaning the atria pump the blood going down, while the ventricles pump the blood going up against gravity. So they pump harder than the atria. So that is why their walls are thicker than the atria. But between the right ventricle and the left ventricle, look at the walls of right ventricle and left ventricle. Which one is thicker? Yes, left ventricle is thicker than right ventricle. Why? This is because when right ventricle pumps blood, the blood goes to the lungs only. While when the left ventricle pumps the blood goes to all parts of the body except the lungs. So therefore, among the four chambers, it is the left ventricle that pumps the hardest because it supplies blood to all parts of the body, while right ventricle is only to the lungs. So our heart has valves. These valves prevent the backflow of the blood and make sure that the blood flow in only one direction. What are the valves in the heart? So these are tricuspid valve. So here is tricuspid valve between RA and RV. Another one is bicuspid valve between LA and LV. So here is bicuspid valve. The other name is mitral valve. And the two semilunar valves. This is pulmonary semilunar valve or pulmonary valve. And this one is this. This is aortic valve or aortic semilunar valve. So these valves ensure that the blood flows in one direction. Okay. So to know the function of each valve in the human heart, you should know the blood circulation, the flow of blood. Okay, so this one is RA and this one is RV. So from RA, the blood goes to RV. So what is the job of this tricuspid valve? So the job of the tricuspid valve is to prevent the backflow of the blood to right atrium. Because the normal flow is going down. So this valve prevents the backflow. Next valve is pulmonary semilunar valve. So from RA to RV, and then the RV pumps the blood to the lungs, and the blood is carried by this blood vessel. We will know the name later. In this blood vessel, there is pulmonary semilunar valve. So the job of this pulmonary semilunar valve is to prevent the backflow of the blood to the right ventricle. The flow of the blood is always from RV to the lungs. It's not going back to RV because of this pulmonary semilunar valve. Next one. From the lungs, oxygenated blood is returned to the left atrium. And then from the left atrium to the left ventricle. So this is the flow of the blood from LA to LV. So therefore, this valve, bicuspid valve or mitral valve, prevents the backflow of the blood from left ventricle to the left atrium. So meaning the blood in the left ventricle does not go back to the left atrium. Because when the left ventricle pumps the blood goes to all parts of the body. And the blood is carried by this biggest artery called aorta. When the left ventricle pumps the blood, this bicuspid valve is closed so that the blood will not flow back to left atrium. So another valve is this aortic semilunar valve. So the flow of the blood is from left ventricle to all parts of the body via the aorta. So aortic valve prevents the backflow of the blood to the left ventricle. Okay, let's do the blood circulation again. From the body, the blood goes to the right atrium. From all parts of the body except the lungs. From head to your foot. This deoxygenated blood is returned to the right atrium. And then the right atrium pumps the blood to the right ventricle. Between right atrium and right ventricle is the valve called tricuspid valve to prevent the backflow of the blood to the right atrium. And then the right ventricle pumps the blood to the lungs, where the exchange of gases takes place. So here, the oxygenated blood turns into oxygenated blood. From the lungs, the blood is returned to the left atrium. And then the left atrium pumps the blood to the left ventricle. Between them is a valve called bicuspid valve or mitral valve. And then the left ventricle pumps the blood to the body. So these are the two valves, tricuspid valve and mitral valve. So later on, another circulation, the complete circulation of the blood, we will include the two semilunar valve. So here is pulmonary valve, and here is aortic valve. Okay, now this is the vena cava. This vena cava is the biggest vein in the body. So this one is called superior vena cava and the other one is inferior vena cava. So blood from the head goes to superior vena cava and to the right atrium, while the blood from the legs, from the trunk, is carried by inferior vena cava to the right atrium. So superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. Please remember the name. So this one is vena cava, superior and inferior. Next, this one is the pulmonary trunk or pulmonary artery. That's why this is called pulmonary valve. This pulmonary trunk or pulmonary artery carries blood from the right ventricle to the lungs. And this pulmonary trunk goes to the left lung and goes to the right lung. So the blood goes to the left lung and to the right lung via these blood vessels. So this one is called left pulmonary artery, and the other one there is right pulmonary artery. So it carries the blood to the lungs, to the left lung, and to the right lung. Next, so these two, right pulmonary vein and left pulmonary vein. So they carry the blood from the lungs back to the left atrium. Look at this, it is red because the blood is already oxygenated. So they carry the blood from the lungs back to left atrium. Next one is the aorta, the biggest artery of the body. So the biggest vein is vena cava. The biggest artery is aorta. So this aorta, this one, when the left ventricle pumps the blood is carried by this aorta to all parts of the body. So ascending aorta, this one. So the blood from the left ventricle ascends, goes up to this part of the aorta called ascending aorta. So this one is ascending aorta, or this one. This is ascending aorta. Next is the arch of the aorta. So here. So the arch of the aorta. This is ascending, and this one is the arch of the aorta. This is ascending, this is the arch of the aorta. Next one is brachiocephalic artery. So the arch of the aorta has three branches. So the first one is brachiocephalic artery. This or this one. So brachiocephalic artery. In the middle, it is called left common carotid artery. So here is left common carotid artery, or this one in this diagram. Left common carotid artery. And the other one is left subclavian artery. So here is left subclavian artery, or this one. And brachiocephalic artery branches into two. So the right subclavian artery. So this is the right, this is the left. And the other one is right common carotid artery, which is this. So this is right common carotid artery, this is left common carotid artery. And finally, the blood goes down to the lower parts of the body through the descending aorta. So this one is ascending aorta, arch of the aorta, descending aorta, brachiocephalic artery, left common carotid artery, left subclavian artery. This is the right subclavian artery and the right common carotid artery. Okay, so let's complete the blood circulation from the body to the heart, to the lungs, and back to the body. So the oxygenated blood from the body is returned to the right atrium via the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So meaning, for example, the blood from the head goes to the right atrium through superior vena cava. And blood from the lower part of the body, let's say from your leg, is returned to the right atrium via the inferior vena cava. And then the right atrium pumps the blood to the right ventricle. Between the right atrium and the right ventricle is the valve called tricuspid valve to prevent the backflow of the blood to the right atrium. And then the right ventricle pumps the blood to the lungs. And the blood is carried by the pulmonary artery. So from the right ventricle to the pulmonary trunk to the left and right pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery has a valve called pulmonary valve or pulmonary semilunar valve, which prevents the backflow of the blood to the right ventricle. In the lungs, the oxygenated blood becomes oxygenated blood. And the process is called diffusion. Then this oxygenated blood is returned to the left atrium by this blood vessel. This blood vessel is called pulmonary vein. So pulmonary vein has no valve. And then the left atrium pumps the blood to the left ventricle. Between them is a valve called bicuspid valve or mitral valve. Then finally, the left ventricle pumps the blood to all parts of the body except the lungs through the aorta. So the aorta has a valve called aortic semilunar valve to prevent the backflow of the blood to the left ventricle. So you will have a speaking test for this one. You say the blood circulation, this. So for your homework, you write the script for this blood flow in the heart, in the body, and in the lungs. So you write in your notebook because you will use this in your speaking test or maybe in the writing part of the test in the midterm exam. So you can have your own script. So like for example, the oxygenated blood from the body is returned to the right atrium via the superior vena cava and inferior vena cava. And then from the right atrium, the blood goes to the right ventricle, and between them is a tricuspid valve. Okay, so this is your activity for today. You write your own script, which you will use for the speaking test about this one. If we have no time for the speaking test, for sure, this will be in the writing part of the midterm exam. So better to practice and write your own script so that it's easier for you to answer the midterm or the speaking test. Write in your notebook. So here is the ascending aorta. This one is the descending aorta. So branches into the different organs of the body to deliver oxygenated blood. And then the arch of the aorta, you have here brachiocephalic artery. So right common carotid artery, left common carotid artery delivers the blood to the head. And this right subclavian and left subclavian to the other part of the body. So another one, chordae tendineae. This chordae tendineae is here. This and this one. They prevent the valves from turning inside out when the ventricles contract. So when the two ventricles contract, right and the left ventricle, when they contract, two valves are closed. These are tricuspid valve and bicuspid valve. They are closed because of this chordae tendineae. So when these two valves, tricuspid and bicuspid valve, are closed, these two semilunar valve, this aortic and pulmonary semilunar valve, are open. So that when the right ventricle pumps, the blood goes to the lungs, and when the left ventricle pumps, the blood goes to all parts of the body. So again, this chordae tendineae prevents the valves from turning inside out. So meaning it closes the valves when the ventricles contract. So that's it for today. Don't forget to write in your notebook your activity for today. So this one, you write a script so that it's easier for you to remember when you do it by yourself. So once again, I'll do it for the last time. The oxygenated blood from all over the body except the lungs is returned to the right atrium via the vena cava, superior and inferior vena cava. The right atrium pumps the blood to the right ventricle. Between them is a tricuspid valve that prevents the backflow of the blood to the right atrium. The right ventricle pumps the blood to the lungs, and the blood is carried by the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery has a pulmonary valve to prevent the backflow of the blood to the right ventricle. In the lungs, gas exchange takes place. The oxygenated blood becomes oxygenated blood by the process called diffusion. The oxygenated blood from the lungs is returned to the left atrium, and it is carried by the pulmonary vein. And then the left atrium pumps the blood to the left ventricle. Between them is a valve called bicuspid valve or mitral valve that prevents the backflow of the blood to the left atrium. And then finally, the left ventricle pumps the blood to all parts of the body, oxygenated blood to all parts of the body except the lungs, through the biggest artery in the body called aorta. And the aorta has aortic valve to prevent the backflow of the blood to the left ventricle. And then the cycle repeats. So body again, to right side of the heart, to the lungs, to the left side of the heart, to the body. So this is the blood flow in the heart and in the body. Okay, goodbye, student.